Tiger King has swept the nation and provided a much-needed distraction during this historic time of social distancing and normalcy displacement. I admit, there was nothing about the description of a show looking at the lives of big cat owners that on the surface appealed to my general interest. But often, the best stories come from little quirky sides of life and the real people who inhabit these spaces. I'll pause here to give my praise for all things documentaries. Hollywood can seem bankrupt for creative ideas and stories. And as a movie lover, I am not the only one jaded by sequels and remakes. Documentaries are amazing, and each great one casts judgment on the lack of originality coming from studios. There are endless amazing stories out there just waiting to be tapped into. Anyway, the main characters in Tiger King are hard to describe because they could not be created in any Hollywood writer's wildest dreams. Meanwhile, the side characters include a number of amputees, former and current drug addicts and kingpins, family members, and victims of sexual grooming working at the wildlife parks. The main characters are not divided into antagonists and protagonists. One of the clear things you learn by episode 3 is that there are no saints among these characters. Well, could we call Joe Exotic a saint? He was a fun-loving, gun-shooting, scrappy individual who helped give jobs to those with few options and was bringing joy to children around the country using interactions with tiger cubs. Nope. He happens to also be a seller of big cats for profit, shows extreme aggression towards one Carol Baskins, and has, let's say, questionable ethics as a person in power when it comes to dating in the workplace. How about the charming, charismatic, and spiritual Doc Antle, who provides big cats to the stars and film industry? Nope. Turns out he also has, let's just say, very questionable ethics in regards to dating in the workplace as a person in power, and a disturbing possible way that older big cats are transitioned. This leaves the sweet and eccentric before-mentioned Carol Baskins, who operates a big cat rescue sanctuary ran with a volunteer army and a social media mini-empire, while pursuing justice against big cat exploiters. Certainly, we have a saint in this case. Well, not really. She is being alleged by many in the show to have murdered her missing husband, and, at least according to Joe Exotic, possibly fed him to her own tigers. So why has this show become such a cultural hit and obsession? The reasons are simple. We love interesting characters with fascinating flaws, and we love a film product that respects our intelligence enough to not shove more judgments down our throat. Tiger King doesn't say, here's a good person, and there is a bad person, or this is the right side to take, and that is the wrong side to take. It simply presents, maybe with some editorial exaggeration for dramatic effect, people, flaws and all, and doesn't come across as taking sides. If this story and subject matter was placed in the hands of a Hollywood studio, it would have been reduced to the most generic of screenplay tropes. It would take the angle of a member of a demographic group fighting to succeed in a world of discrimination. It would have become the Carol Baskins empowerment story against an industry dominated by the patriarchy. Or the story of Joe Exotic, a gay entrepreneur striving for success against homophobic state bureaucrats. Or it would have become a lecture movie on how animal exploitation is bad. There's a nasty trend among so-called movie creators and enlightened critics that if a film features the story of a person from a historically oppressed demographic group, and you don't like the film or show, then your opinion is dismissible because you are an istophobe against that demographic. It is a get-out-of-jail-free card for bad writing, logic, production, and character development. The truth is, very few people can relate to the lead characters on the show 100%. For example, Joe is a gay man with 2 husbands, but also has a mullet, loves country music, shoots guns, and if I was to guess, probably doesn't vote for political candidates or parties typically supported by those who advocate on the behalf of such a demographic. Joe doesn't fit into a clean-cut mold because, guess what? Real people never do. Yet despite characters like Joe, under suspicion Carol, and the non-traditional relationship having Doc not being exactly like everyday people in most of our lives, none of that has mattered when it comes to our high interest in knowing how their story ends. See, people aren't the racist, homophobic, misogynistic Neanderthals that highbrow critics paint them as. Generally speaking, if a movie isn't liked, it's probably because it sucked, not because it has characters of a diverse or different demographic background. However, when a film is made primarily with the intent of featuring characters of underrepresented demographic groups to teach the audience a lesson and viewpoint, it seems that studios pat themselves on the back for this accomplishment alone, and forget to prioritize the most important elements of crafting a good movie, like, the story and the characters and the screenplay. Tiger King is the rare treat which refuses to give a sermon. It refuses to create saints of its leading characters. It allows a fascinating story and fascinating people to breathe and not be constrained to a world of black and white morality and two-dimensional characters. These characters are people we know in different forms, just exaggerated a bit, and just so happen to be involved in big cats. Human motivations are complex, and much of the bad acts that we do are ones we feel justified in doing. The protagonists we love aren't loved because they are 100% good, but because they have convinced us in the film to go along with the good and bad choices they make, even if we wouldn't make such choices ourselves. This even holds true for the great antagonists, such as Thanos, Killmonger, or Agent Smith from The Matrix. These antagonists feel like they are only the quote-unquote bad guy because the story has to have one, not because they are actually the walking embodiment of evil. One of the signs that the lead characters of Tiger King are three-dimensional as well as fascinating is that they have people who support them, and many who would go to the ends of the earth for them. Writers should keep this in mind when developing characters, both good and bad. You will notice on social media that the Tiger King memes have taken over as of late, and all of them are fun and great and in some way relatable to what it means to be human. These are people sharing these memes, not some marketing promotion. This show has tapped into a chord of collective escapism which has been lacking in recent movies. Hollywood writers need to take note. Above the lectures and the sermons and the diversity, what all people want the most is a captivating story featuring amazing characters with some element of humanity, good and bad. Thank you, Civilian, for tuning in. Long live Moviecraft, and we hope you receive some benefit from this dossier. And remember, always say cheese, because if there's a picture, our agents are on it.